Depression is not sadness, and anxiety is not fear.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thanks for watching Inquiry. This has been a tumultuous year in many ways, and as it draws to an end, we have a special guest on Inquiry today. Karan Johar has captivated audiences for decades, but this year he's had a lot of accusations hurled at him, being a nepotist, manipulating the media, and running a star machinery that undermines those who are not his friends. Karan has chosen to be silent on all of that for now, but he does admit to being a mom and pop show of a different kind. Karan is currently immersed in the experience of being a single parent to his twins Ruhi and Yash, and he's just published his first children's book, The Big Thoughts of Little Love. It's about how we stereotype and box our children in from infancy, and it presents Karan in a different and passionate avatar. This conversation was held live with other partners, and it's presented by Juggernaut Books. Hi, Karan. It's fabulous to meet you and have you online. It's, we've all been in a year of not seeing each other. It's fantastic to have you. And like she said, it's a beautiful book. So thank you for joining us.
No, thank you.
In this book, you took up the whole idea of the stereotype, and it's something that has been a big strand in your own life, in your cinema. We've sort of been used to seeing you through a certain facet. But you recently had published another book about your life where you spoke about this whole, restriction of stereotypes in all our life. So I'm very, very happy to see that your first children's book is about stereotypes. So I want to first ask you, what prompted you to write this book?
So actually, it was a conversation I had with Chiki Sarkar, when she spoke to me about the idea of doing a children's book. And I think to me, what's always been not upsetting. Well, it's been almost when I observed parents say things, to their children. And I don't blame millions of parents, because I think that's how they grew up, by things that were just loosely said, without realizing that they can actually walk into the psyche of a child and stay there. Children are very impressionable. Things that kind of enter their psyche and their headspace actually define and make them the people they eventually become. So little things like when you say, why are you crying? Don't cry. Boys don't cry. Now, why would you say that? Because that goes and makes a boy feel like he's a totally different, person on some different kind of emotional pedestal as opposed to a girl. Right. Or you turn around and tell a girl that you should learn Kathak, or you should learn ballet, or you should not learn Taekwondo, because apparently girls don't, learn Taekwondo. Now, if at all, what a girl must learn in this day and age is definitely self-defense.
And a boy should not be fortressed with his emotions.
And a boy should not be and if a boy wants to wear a pink shirt, like this blue-pink phenomena really drives me crazy. And my children, were succumbing to that stereotype that, oh, I don't like blue because that's for Yash. Ruhi would say, I'm pink because I'm a girl. And it was just bothering me, these things. And I used to tell my nurses and nannies, my own mother, please don't say these things. If Yash wants to play with the doll, it's fine. It's a doll. I mean, if Ruhi wants to ride the car or the cycle, let her. Why does she have to sit with the doll and Yash has to be with the car and he has the water gun, but Ruhi has some kind of a Barbie kit? And I'm like, we're putting them into boxes. We say the darnest things, we say the most ridiculous things, which actually come from no space of logic. So the book really was, when I was talking to Chiki, and in that conversation, I kept rambling about this. And she said, you have a book right there. So that's when we got writing, and, and it was just a story of like twins, because I wanted to kind of base them on my own experience. And of course, it's fictionalized because I don't have a bua that gets married like in the book there is, or they don't have a bua because all their buas are already married. I put in, and of course, there cannot be anything I do without a shadi sequence. So we had to have
the lavish double spread with the
shadi, yes. So I was like, even in a children's illustration book, I can't help myself. There's a shadi.
That came in right there. That's my choice.
So that's my stereotype, unfortunately. But Priya Kurian, I think, understands the space that I've lived and, been surrounded by. So she very cleverly, I think, with her own way and her own aesthetic, beautifully incorporated that. So really, Shoma, it's about how we raise our children and what we say. The book is very simple. It's really about what not to say rather than what to say.
Right. So, Karan, you know, before we go into other areas, I wanted to get some sense of, like you said, we've all lived with this. You know, you're the most high profile sort of, you know, in our imagination, even the cinema shaped us. So, someone like you, one would imagine, has always lived on your own terms, you know, but what were the stereotypes you had to struggle with when you were growing up? You know, were there things that made you feel difficult
So,
and
so
awkward?
I was a very effeminate child, Shoma. When in my growing years, it's not something that I had any control over, either the way I ran or the way my hands moved or the way I was. And there used to be a word in the 80s. They used to call boys like that pansies. The word was pansy, which is not a word we use today, because now there are boxes you put, sexuality into, now terminology boxes. But I would say that time it used to make me feel that I was lesser, in terms of when you went onto a football pitch and you weren't allowed to play because you were apparently not a boy, because you were like a girl. They thought that was what other boys thought. Similarly, it was the same thing even in the groups of people that you met. So I was always closer to the girls. It was the boys would either make fun of you or then be protective of you. There was no kind of equal give and take. It was either boys who would say that, don't worry, you'll be okay if you're standing by me, or they would make fun, poke a joke. So I wasn't allowed to play sport, I wasn't allowed to kind of, engage with those activities that were then, I found myself seeking some kind of solace in food. So then I grew, into a larger boy and then an even larger boy. And that made me get my own level of insecurities. So one thing ripples into the other. So my childhood was not troubled. It was beautiful. I had the most solid parenting. I had wonderful, wonderful relationships around me. But these things do walk into your headspace. You have to then fight your own inner battle to emerge from there. And that I did. Fortunately, I had my mother and father were the kind of parents that gave me that self-confidence, that they never, ever, ever made me feel like, I was different from anyone else. And, in fact, I walked the path of like drama and elocution and debate in school, and I got my confidence from there. So I still remember that at my school, like the last year in school, where normally the boys who run in sport are the most popular, but I had to kind of achieve that level of popularity in school because I was the debater, the elocutionist. I was the drama face. And, I had got equal number of points for my house. We have red, blue, green, yellow house. So in my headspace, I had emerged as a star, in my own head, of course. But I felt like that gave me the confidence to combat what was coming my way. Had I not been successful at something else and my parents hadn't encouraged me, I may have lived with that insecurity all my life, and God and Lord knows where I would have been today. But that's where I think parenting is very critical, because no matter what the child goes through, my parents never made me feel like I was different or lesser, or like I should be like the others. My mother never told me, why aren't you hanging with or playing more sport? My father, just encouraged everything I ever wanted to do. When I wanted to learn a language like French, or learn an instrument, or kind of like do drama and theater, and possibly not do what other boys were doing, he allowed me, and my mother allowed me. And I think that's why I'm here today.
But that's fascinating, Karan, that despite such a, like you said, like a enabling and loving and protective home, and one which just was fluid for you.
Yeah.
You once shared a story about, yet you lived with so much of self-dislike through your childhood because of stereotyping, that even without your parents' knowledge, you went seeking help to reconstruct yourself to be this glamorous, change your body. Can you talk about that experience, and why, like, even with such a enveloping family life, why were you still needing to do that?
Because, Shoma, eventually family gives you support. They give you encouragement, but you have to yet go out there and do what you need to. So everybody who thinks that things are going to happen for them organically, are living in some kind of a bubble, because your parents are a huge, so they are like the two pillars that kind of give you that support to hold yourself together. But eventually you've got to go out into the real world and do what you need to on your own, because eventually we're all on our own. You know, we have help, we seek that help, we have that support, but you've got to be a go-getter. Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that go and chase your dreams, because only you can do that. No one can do that for you. So I remember at a very early stage, I joined a public speaking academy. There was a Nazareth public speaking academy, because I felt I needed the confidence to, you know, kind of make my skills better. He also worked on my voice. He felt my voice was very squeaky. He said he allowed me to get baritone in my voice, which I did. And then subsequently, I kind of tried to on my own nurture whatever like talents I felt I had, you know, whether it was in the space of writing or developing. And I kind of did everything I could. Like I did every course that you can think of, because I think there's never an end to learning. At one point, I had become a course junkie. Like I had done a course on fruit and flower arrangement. I've done a course on like even import export, which I knew I would never do, on advertising, on the kind of screenwriting, on poem writing. Like I every summer when other kids my age were like on a holiday or just chilling out, I was like just learning. And I was also ambitious to kind of achieve. So I did French for 6 years, because I just felt somewhere in life it'll all add up. And eventually, even when I topped my college at BCom, my professor asked me that, you know, they want to give you a seat to one of the leading institutes of management. And I said, but I want to make movies. And instinctively, the response was like, but why did you study so hard? And I was like, I didn't study for anyone else. I studied for myself. I studied because I wanted to kind of make sure that I was good at whatever I did. And now I want to make movies, and I hope I'm good at that too. But it was not like, ye mat karo, you know, if you don't study, you walk into the movie industry, there's a myth that, you know, you don't need a degree. Yes, you may not need a degree in terms of an optic, but you need it for discipline, for self-discipline, for some kind of like, you know, kind of structure that your life needs to be in. So, I mean, I think that I was my own therapist, but I was kind of like fortunate that I had that ability. I'm also Gemini, so that two of me. I think one of me is the practical, sorted one that advises the other. That makes me sound like a split personality, but I think I have two people breathing within me that allows each other to breathe very efficiently.
But I'm glad you brought this up, Karan, because that's another big stereotype to break. You know, you were saying between gender, but there's also about who you want to be professionally and in terms of success. So what you just spoke about actually breaks that parental stereotype we have about defining success for our children, you know. And you're saying there was great fluidity between flower arranging to exports to film to French.
I did everything, and no one stopped me. No one stopped me. In fact, my father and mother encouraged every bit of learning that I gave myself. They were almost amused at how much I wanted to keep doing. And there was a point in time as a child, I was the only boy in like a jazz ballet class, you know, and I remember my father used to drive me to that class, Shoma. And I'm talking about the 80s. And he didn't find it strange, and therefore I didn't find it strange. And I was the only boy in that class, because I wanted to. Then when I was in college, I did a course on like ballroom dance with actually Siddharth Roy Kapoor. You know, he's a filmmaker. His mother, Saloni Roy Kapoor, used to have these classes in Kulaba and Cuff Parade. And I did jazz and the foxtrot and the waltz. And I don't know for what joy I was doing this, but it made me so happy, and no one stopped me. And I'm like, my father just told me, whatever you do, enjoy your work. That's it, you know. So, and I think that's the advice I would tell parents to tell their children, that, you know, you may think that, you know, papa ka business hai, and, you know, the son should kind of do that, or do something more stable in your opinion, like being a lawyer, doctor, engineer. Everybody thinks those are more stable professions. But the only stability you have to really look for is your child's mental health and stability. And that comes from their core happiness. And if they want to be a musician, they may not make the money that you may imagine that the world needs to make, you know, to survive in our times today. But at least it'll give them the joy to try it, and let them reach the decision that they've not worked it out for themselves. Don't make it for them, you know. And I believe that. Like my father always told me, if you fail at something, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you've learned something, and you'll move on to learning something else. And I really think that I got the right kind of thoughts. That, having said that, some of the stereotypes also came my way. No parent is perfect. But I think I would say I drew more positives from my parenting than any negatives.
But again, it's like just organically you leading me to the exact question that I want, which is that while we are painting this picture about liberal, fluid parenting, which really puts no shells or boxes for children, every parent has a dilemma, and right now, I think of myself as a super liberal parent, but I'm constantly having dilemmas about how to inculcate value systems, and what are those values, and are they your values or your child's values? So there's inevitable dilemma in every parent's life. So I would love you to touch on the dilemmas of parenting. Like, now that you have babies, have you already encountered any, or are they too small? Or can you foresee some dilemma? And in that, the core question I'm asking you is that while being a super fluid parent, what is the 5 or 6 values that you would want your kids to have, which are non-negotiable? What's the non-negotiables in your life?
Well, I do agree with you, Shoma. There is a lot of it. And, I think there's no rule book in parenting. That's the first thing that we need to know. The dilemmas are all allowed. You're allowed to have those dilemmas because you're like, am I forcing my characteristics on my child? Am I forcing my traditions and values and my religious beliefs or my spiritual beliefs on my child? There's always that because...
No, even your moral. What is your value
Your
system?
moral. But you must understand, your children absorb. They kind of get a sense of you without you realizing. Like, almost I feel like children up to a certain age are like psychics. They kind of know exactly what's going on. If I'm sad and low, my son and daughter sometimes just find their way to come and give me that hug. I've never asked for it. I've not told them anything. They just know something is wrong. It's like they can smell it and sense it. So I think what you do and what you say at home is very critical because they're all like sponges. They're absorbing you on a daily basis. So whether you like it or not, your moral fabric, your beliefs, your practices, what you do, what you say is going to be entering their headspace. You cannot change that. Then who they hang out with is the stage 2. Because that is also, they say sangat, na? Like old grannies tell you ki buri sangat ka asar, so the other people who have different, so it's very critical that you look at who your children are actually meeting, because, and that's the only one thing that I might sound rigid when I say this, but because that's the one thing that I knew my parents were very careful about, because you may inculcate all the values in your child, what you believe, or you might think that they're going in the right way, but then they will go outside in the real world, make their own relationships, and they're with people who are contrary to what you would like your child to be or what you think that is the right way. And that could mess things up. It could actually wash over all your beautiful fluid training, because you'll suddenly find your child not, because at one point in time, they're not in your control, right? They go into school, they're meeting other kids. So I always tell myself that that's the second stage. Right now, I'm not facing any dilemma. They're like beautiful sponges, especially in this lockdown. It's this whole year, they haven't really stepped out. So they've just seen me and my mom. And, hopefully we've been saying and doing the right things around them. So they're fine. But I feel like, to answer your first part of the question, the dilemma is allowed. But your biggest dilemma should be not what you're saying at home, is about what happens when they step out of the boundary of your house. That's where the real, I wouldn't say the word control because you should never control, but you should observe, monitor, and then give your take when required. What are the values, you ask me, that are not negotiable? Firstly, respect for each other's gender is not negotiable. In my respect, I believe that this bifurcation of girl and boy has to kind of stop. And there's no way that I will allow any kind of superiority given to one over the other. That is something that is not, and I'm training them to be like that. You have to respect each other as genders and respect everyone, and just respect is very critical. So when the other day I walked in and and I said do namaste to somebody, and because I've trained them to do namaste, not for any other reason. It's also because we're in COVID times. So it's the reason why namaste was probably hygienic. But to me, I'm not being traditional and Indian. I'm just being practical and also making them get mannered. But to me, that manners is very critical. The second thing for me is manners. Say the hellos, say the thank yous, say the goodbyes. Please be mannered, because that's the one thing that I appreciate in every other children. That to me, manners is not negotiable. I think the third thing is expression of love. I want to train them to be able to express their love, not just their dissent or their disappointment. that to me is not negotiable, but that to me is emotionally not negotiable. Because I think that we rarely allow our children, sometimes not allow, we don't express our love, so our children don't express their love. So I'm always expressing mine and I'm making them express theirs. You know, I always tell them, if you come once in a while without a reason, I say, Dada, I love you, Mama, I love you. They call my mother Mama as well. And I'm like, express your love, because we don't allow something, that kind of expression. We are sometimes, especially between fathers and sons, I know it's a cliche and again a stereotype, but it's true to around us. There's a lot of silence in that dynamic for some weird reason, because I think men in general don't like to express themselves. I don't want that of my child, of my son or my daughter. So the other thing is expression of love, respect for gender, manners, expression for love. And of course, the other thing that for me is very critical is discipline. Because I believe they must sleep at a certain hour, wake up and have some kind of discipline, because I know what it's done for me. Like, I'm never late for a meeting, Shoma, because I respect time, because my father and mother respected mine and allowed me to respect theirs. Yeah. I feel punctuality is a very underrated virtue. You know, I believe that we
respect for others. Yeah.
Just 15-minute ka delay is apparently okay. It's not okay in my book. I'm like, I'll never make someone wait. And I believe from now I inculcate that discipline in them, so that in the future they can go ahead. And I'm making my mistakes. I'm allowing them the sugar that I shouldn't. I'm allowing them the food habits sometimes. I'm allowing them to be I'm allowing the indulgence now and then. I can't help myself. I'm a single parent in that way. And I feel like, chalo, I'm allowed some of those things. But these are some of the qualities that I believe in my space of parenting are not negotiable.
Yeah. I would add one more to that, Karan, I'm sure. But for me, like one big one, non-negotiable is also awareness of others, like concern for others, you know, because especially coming from privileged lives, you can be very cocooned into your own pleasures and your own needs.
No, absolutely. 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 And I totally agree with you, because also the disparity shown by you is going to finally creep into the headspace. You don't show the disparity in your immediate environment, you're going to then make them feel like, so, you know, so it comes from very tiny things about how they address everyone in the house, you know, respect that you give the others in your immediate, like, you know, in your work environment in the house is how they will be. So that is very critical, that you make sure that there is that respect given, you know, which they do. And I think not only compassion to people working for you, but also for other children. You know, the ability to want to share, because I noticed children at a very early age are immediately territorial about their things. It's the way they're meant to be, I think, in a certain way, and you have to break that territorialism. You know, you have to make them kind of try and share, though I'm trying very hard. My children are just not sharers. For some reason, they don't even share with each other. Like, they are so crazily protective about their things. I don't know what to do. I'm trying every day, saying sharing is caring is like almost become a mantra in my life. And I think I have to find a new way of saying it to them. They just don't like to share their things for some reason. And I'm totally the opposite of that. I think they get that from maybe my mother. I have to change that because my mother is very territorial about her things. I think that's her. So let me blame it on her. Let me just feel free of that.
So, you know, let me come to this whole idea of single parenting, because when we're talking about breaking stereotypes, there's that as well. That have you felt any sense of absence gap, you know, when you are parenting? Are you feeling any mother-father divide, any sense of companionship that you're missing? And have you taken on some of the, you know, when we say this whole mother-father divide as well, that have you been doing some of the mother aspects of it, which is the late nights, the nappy changing, or have you palmed that off to your mom and the nannies and stuff?
So I have to be very honest and say I've not felt any divide really. I've not felt the void because of my mother. My mother is literally 24/7. Like, the only television she watches is the nanny cam. So that is like, she's obsessed with my children in the most beautiful way. Like, literally, when she's not in their room, she's watching them on her phone. So she is like, it's like Big Boss. Like, you know, like my mother is Big Boss and looking over these children, like literally looming large, knowing exactly what's going on. So I haven't really felt the void. For myself, I would say that maybe eventually there are times that I feel like, do I miss a partner kind of to do this? But because I have my mother, and we at a very early stage decided that they would call her Mama. So that, you know, they feel like there's a dada and a mama and everything is like everyone else's, because, you know, I knew that they would go out and see mamas and dadas everywhere, and I didn't want them to feel that they don't. So because my mother is so hands-on, everything, that void is not, I don't feel, I would love to give you an emotionally, evocative response to that, but I don't have one, because there is actually complete normalcy, complete happiness in this beautiful arrangement. And I would never have been able to do this without my mother. Like, I think that I have to bless her and thank her. And even though she is my mother and you can take your mothers for granted, or so they say, I don't want to do that. I want to be appreciative of everything she's ever done for my children, because really the value system she's inculcated in me is beautifully getting transferred to them as well. And I'm really fortunate. I changed nappies a few times, but not very many times. Have I
Like,
fed them? Yes. Have I fed them? Yes. Have they slept with me? Yes. I've done those maternal, paternal, well, crossover duties. But have I done a lot of it? No. I don't want to lie to you. No. But do I feel like I need to? Yes. Have I not been able to? Yes. Would I like to much more of it? Yes. Has it made a difference? I'm not sure. But because my mother always says, this is crazy. I do all the work and yet they come running to you in the way they've never come running to me, because they are very attached to me. And all I think I've given them in abundance is love. And I think sometimes maybe nappy changing is required, but then that love somehow, I hope, hopefully compensates. Not that I'm justifying my inaction in that department, but I'm saying that I haven't found, because my schedules are crazy. So I make time for them, enough time for them, but then I have to kind of sacrifice some of those duties for the work that I do.
right. But here I'm just uh, sort of saluting the women who also have full-time jobs and do a lot of, I mean, I'm a working mother all my life. I know I've slept 3 hours mostly through my life because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
full-time mothering, full-time working, full-time being, success, all of that. And salute the dads who actually really leave no divisions between what a man and a woman's job is as a parent.
No, like I look at my mother, Shoma, she's 78 years old. She has bad knees. She has had 3 spinal surgeries. She's really in pain all the time. Yet her alertness to do with them, her abandon in the way she kind of monitors them, and just the kind of passion she has for her parent part of the parenting. I mean, I really have to be so eternally grateful to her, because this would have been an impossible task. And I kind of knew that I had her. That's why I took that decision. And very honestly, if I didn't have her presence in my life the way I do, I may not have even taken this plunge, because I do believe that it's an odious task. It is, parenting is a tough, tough, tough task, and because you're creating people and personalities and bringing them into a turbulent world, you do need. I'm not saying that single parents are not empowered. I think they're beautiful, but I'm grateful that I had my mother to do whatever she is doing.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that original thing of, why you wanted babies. And that's something which is very crucial. But I'm sure our audience is not only those who have young babies. So I wanted to come to another aspect of your life, Karan, which is that even after you achieve success, even after you've broken free and you've broken free of all these stereotypes we've been discussing, in your adult life, you went through a phase of depression and, having to struggle with yourself. What brought that on, and what were your lessons from that, which again would empower many parents who may be struggling with children who are not feeling happy even as adults, or even within their own lives. So what was
So
that?
I think it's a very valid question, and I think it's an answer that will, of course, differ from individual to individual. I can only speak about myself. When I turned 40, actually this happened when I was about 42. Uh, I started feeling like there was like some kind of a change and shift in my way of being. I started sleeping very little. I started feeling like every time like the phone rang, I felt like like there was something, there was an anxious feeling within me. There was a seeping anxiety. I started feeling not sad, because I believe depression is not sadness, because sadness and happiness are transient emotions. You go from one to the other. Depression is an altogether different phenomena that you have to deal with. It's just where you don't feel like you want to get out of bed, and it takes you that while to creep out of bed, have your shower, and face the world. And you haven't slept enough, so you're also exhausted emotionally and physically, but also you're like, And then you're this people's person that has always been kind of the life of a party, and then you're play acting that same part, but you don't feel it. You actually want to leave that party and go back home and just go into bed, watch random television, read a book, and just not be with people. And actually, what you're known for, so you're fighting your own reputation in a certain sense. And you're doing that because you care about what people think, but actually you shouldn't be. So you're going through that inner turmoil. And I knew that I was going through something that was a part of maybe a midlife, not a crisis, but it was like a midlife point of some kind of breakdown. And I needed to address it. I spoke to a very dear friend who advised me to speak to a psychiatrist. I met her. She was a wonderful lady. I had many sessions with her. She felt that need that I had to be on some kind of medication. And it took me 2 or 3 years for me to kind of go through the beats of that phase of my life, Shoma. And then I weaned off that medication. And I'm so much better for that. Now, what can I say to anybody else? All I can say is vigilance for self and vigilance for people around you. Not just your child, but yourself first. You have to know you're strong within. First, you have to know the difference between sadness and depression. Sadness, as I said, is momentary and transient. It's like, I'm sad this job didn't happen correctly. I'm sad this project didn't come through. I'm sad that I didn't make the money I thought. I'm sad I'm not looking good today. I'm sad I'm not feeling good today. But the next morning I get a piece of good news and I'm happy. That means what I felt was sadness. And what I'm feeling now is happiness. Depression is not sadness, and anxiety is not fear. Because fear is altogether different from anxiety. Anxiety is when you really have no control over what your inner emotions are, and you start feeling anxious at the ring of a doorbell, at the ring of a phone, or at a person walking in and asking you a question, or meeting people. You don't want to meet like 20 people at one go, and you feel restless, you feel anxious, you don't know why. Address that and see it. And for teenagers, especially parents who have teenage children, it's creeping into them a lot. Technology is doing that to us. Whether it's Instagram or Twitter, opinions, followers, feedback, the way you look, the way you're told to look, like it's like all that, when you have body issues, you have issues to do with your personality, your sexuality, you have so much going on. I believe parents need to constantly look at their child. If they've locked themselves up in a room for too long, if they're blocking people from walking in, if they're actually behaving different than what they were behaving, please make sure that you identify that situation and seek help, because you're helping your child. Mental health is something that we do not give enough time to, enough attention to, and enough knowledge of. Nobody reads anything about mental health, and it's treated in a way that is so insensitive, not only in our country, in so many parts of this world. And I'm glad the world is waking up to the fact that it's as much a problem. Like you immediately rush to the doctor with a cardiac issue, or with a diabetes issue, or with a neuro issue, with a pain in your body, a knee, a back, and you'll go to the best doctors, the specialists, you'll seek assistance, you'll vitaminize your body for whatever you need to. But mental health, you don't understand. It's as much of an issue, in fact, if not more. And I believe you have to be vigilant for self and your immediate environment. So I'm only telling you that, again, I seeked help because I believe that's what you need to do. And I identified it, and I was able to seek help, and I'm glad I did, and I'm fortunate that I could. But there are a lot of others I see around me who are not doing that. There are parents who, so we as a community, and I don't know if it's a thing being in our country, but we tend to brush things under the carpet emotionally a lot, because we believe ke theek ho jayega. We believe that when you brush a big issue, a ghar ka issue or an emotional issue under the carpet, it'll take care of itself. But understand that that dirt that you have brushed under the carpet, or that baggage that you brushed under the carpet, is going to just solidify, become even bigger, larger, and eventually you're not going to be able to control it. So I believe very strongly addressal and acknowledgement of issue is the first step to improvement.
Yeah. So that's fabulous, Karan. Before we open this up, and I think we've touched on a lot of deep chords, but before we open it up to the audience, I wanted to ask you, why did you, in that, like you said, super glamorous, you have the arc lights on you, you have everything, in that, being a single parent, what moved you to have children, and bring that into your life, and how has it changed you in any way, if it has? this whole process of having babies?
It was I'm a result of my instinct, Shoma. I've done everything as a result of my instinct. I knew that at a certain age when I just needed to kind of go into the 2.0 version of my life emotionally. And I felt that me parenting was going to be the next stage of myself, and I feel like, and I know that, that could have been and I have to be honest and say partially it may have been a selfish decision, because you know that eventually you're alone and you want the comfort of people to love you like you were loved, by your parents. And you want that love for yourself, which sometimes the kind of love that children can give a parent or parent have given their children is a different kind of unconditional love that you don't get from a partner, a romantic partner, a spouse, or a relationship. You get that from your children, and I seek that. I wanted that because I was so loved by mine and I was the only child. I wanted that for myself. So maybe 50% of my decision was selfish and 50% was because I believe I was ready for it emotionally. So I took that step. I'm not sure whether selfishness is the only reason to have children, because it probably is not. But in my case, I can't lie to you because I can't lie to myself.
And has it changed you in any way?
It centered me. I was a little all over the place in my head. And I feel like I have a tunnel vision for what I want emotionally and professionally now. And I think my kids have done that. They've given me a center, and I believe that center shows me a path. When you go left and right, you still don't follow one path. You keep going all over the place. You go into a zigzag zone of life. I think when you get a center within, you have a path ahead that you can just walk on. And I think I found my center with them.
You've been through a very rough summer, and this is not the platform to discuss that. But, just sharing something that I've been through, like crazy times in my life, and what you're saying about children and having that, this anchorage that you said, that it sees you through anything, because there's that purity of love.
There was not a day through this year, and it's been a tough year, that I slept with a heavy heart only because I had put them to bed right before that. And it just kind of is like a calming, soothing, balming effect on your wounded self. It's like you may have the wounds through the day, but you kind of sleep knowing that you'll wake up to that hug and that kiss and that feeling. Like almost it's like you're going through a rough phase and you see that face and you feel like, nothing matters. Like, I mean, no troll can do to me and combat the love that I get from my children. I just believe that nothing anyone says in the world can affect me anymore because I feel I have them. Like they have given me the empowerment emotionally that I believe absolutely no turbulence in your life can, kind of shake you up with.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Karan. And more power to the book. It's the starting little baby step into this whole conversation about stereotypes. And as a society, we live with many of them. So it's a fantastic move. And I think just the passion and candidness with which you've spoken itself opens it up even further, So I'm going to open this up for questions now, and let's see what the audience has. Just give me a minute. I'm going to see the questions. Okay, so Savira has a question to ask, that want to understand your style of parenting and how does this book fit in?
My style of parenting, you mean like the processes I adopt, I suppose, maybe
of disciplining, like if they do something, how do you discipline? How do you enforce even a little bit of control?
Well, I think it's important to kind of like, sometimes it's tough because your children are always, being naughty or kind of stepping out of the zone of your discipline. But somehow I think if you set the motion right from the very beginning, they fall in. Like my children, let me tell you, because they know they have to sleep at a certain hour, they don't combat sleep at all. Like they don't, like they know, like many times they're saying, Dada, it's time for us to sleep. Now leave the room. Like, they know, because from the beginning I've said, this is the time you sleep. You have to sleep at this time. No matter what, you have to sleep. It's gone in their head. So I think sometimes being like a broken record has worked in, and my mother saying that again and again and again, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, has gone to the head. And also I believe shouting and screaming is not something that actually has ever worked with me. when my parents, when I was raising, and I don't think it believes, like we believe that temporary nature of shouting and screaming at a child will actually resolve that issue. I think a stoic silence goes a long way. Like you say it and say, I'm not happy, Yash or Ruhi, with what you just did. I'm not happy. They will still continue, but it's gone in their head that Dada's not happy, and they'll find their way back to you to do something cute because they know that they've upset you. So I take a very silent but upset tone, and I go distant from them. I don't either come nowhere close to them. I show my unhappiness in a very strong, silent manner. And I believe that's really worked. So my style of parenting is never to scream, never to shout, to discipline with strength and silence, as opposed to screaming, shouting, and constantly badgering them with your like, I believe it's worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's a very important one. Every parent has that dilemma that when you are putting the line in the sand, that this line doesn't work. How do you, and as
and for me, I have a double responsibility, because how you behave with one, whether expression of love, you have to do with the other. So if you can't scream at one and be good to the other also, because you see, they are very, very, very susceptible to any kind of emotional energy when that happens. Even if you gift them, you have to give them the same thing. Like that's the way with twins. So I have a kind of a unusual, and mine is because there's a girl and boy, they're not two girls and two boys, so it's like you have to kind of be very careful. You're hugging one, you have to hug the other. You scream at one, it's not possible that she will feel or he will feel that you're actually not being the same with the other. So you have to balance everything you do. So in my case, I feel like I'm just a balance machine the whole day, which is what I want to do as well.
Right. So Devanshi has a question. What do you plan to write next? Are you keen on writing a second part to your autobiography?
Well, what do I plan to write next? I do believe that An Unsuitable Boy, which I wrote, definitely warrants a continuous kind of, I think, energy. But if 2020 was any indication, I feel that there's a lot more that can come. So I'll wait it out and write part 2 of that book maybe in a couple of years. But what I do want to do is the big thoughts of Little Kusha next, because in the illustration, I want to go the girl's perspective. We've done Little Love. Now we're going to do Little Kusha. And I hope that I'm allowed to eventually do that.
Right. So Namrata Sadhwani has a question. Sorry, before that, Natasha from Singapore says, there are a lot of children's books out there on stereotypes. What is the special feel or thing in your book that makes it a keeper?
I haven't read many other children's books based on stereotypes, so I can't tell. I just think that mine is really deeply ingrained into the way I think the Indian parenting operates. Because, I think we have different cultures, and I think the West has parented their children in different ways than how we were raised. So I've kept it very to the country. The book, I think, is very representative of what we are as a community of people and how we were raised in our country. And I believe we've kept that traditional aspect of parenting versus what I believe is the progressive way of parenting and balance that. So I would say the USP of the book is that it's deeply entrenched in parenting in India, and I feel like I'm not sure if there's another book like this in India. And if there is, I'd love to read it. But I believe this is representative of what we are as parents. And I hope that resonates with every Indian parent, every Asian parent.
So Tina Singh Walia says, what advice would you give to parents with teenage children during this pandemic?
Well, again, I think it's important for you to occupy their minds and not just their, it's like, because I know that a lot of teenagers are going through a lot of inner angst because they've been blocked into their homes. They haven't been able to, and they're seeking only viral assistance for a window into the outside world, which is not always healthy. So I think you have to inculcate a way that they can actually occupy their minds by, taking up online courses, learning something, and, making that feel exciting for them. Something that could be a passion of theirs that they take up that makes them feel good. I tell a lot of my parent friends who have like teenage children that please don't allow them to wither away and watch just OTT platform work and just be on the phone, on Instagram, or just constantly on WhatsApp video calls with their friends, because it's going to make them rust away and it's going to make them sadder. I think they need to kind of work towards doing stuff that engage their minds through this pandemic. I think they need to learn. A lot of available learning is there online, and I think that I would encourage parents to encourage their children, but not to do it like a pressure, but something that they would enjoy. If your child is a good singer, tell them to kind of hone that craft, a music instrument, anything online that kind of makes them enjoy what they're doing. But they need to do a lot of that, because otherwise they might just kind of feel very stilted in this environment.
It's something that actually a lot of parents have been sharing. When you were talking about sleep, I was just thinking about it. I've been very fortunate. I have two boys, 17, 15. I've lived a conflict-less existence as a parent. And suddenly we're in this conflict zone over sleep and technology, exactly and I'm just like, how did we fall into the stereotype over fighting over sleep and sleep time and technology? It's just, it drags you under before you've even known it. And we are actually in a war zone over it. And it's something a lot of parents are sharing, this.
Because, it's very tough with 15 and 17-year-olds. I know, because they have such solid minds of their own. So you have to kind of just encourage them to, I think, do stuff that is outside of what they're doing at, in their regular life. Because a lot of kids initially were very excited about the fact that there was just a lot of freedom. But that freedom, let me tell you, can be unhealthy after a point of time. So you have to make sure that they are occupying their minds in a way that they would be engaged by. Because only when they're occupied in a way that they're driven by, that will actually kind of not make them feel like they're kind of rusting away. And there are times that this year can be tough on us as older people, as people of a certain age. Well, older, not like that, but just as more like as parents. I'm like, suddenly I felt old.
How did I self-describe?
But I just feel like we are going through our own conflict within. But we need to kind of make sure that the children are engaged, because it's really sad what they're going through. I can tell, I see it, and I feel they need to be engaged in some way or the other.
Right. Upasana has a fun question, which is like vis-a-vis your kids' food tastes and whether they at all like any Sindhi dishes, and does your mom make any of them?
Well, my son Yash is very into his dal chawal or Sindhi kadhi and chawal, and please do tell Upasana that, or rather Upasana is listening to this, that they love Sindhi kadhi and chawal and aloo tuk, because you must know that my house, I'm Punjabi, my father's Punjabi, my mother's Sindhi, so I'm both, but my food habits are all Sindhi. I've got them all from my mother. So sai bhaji and Sindhi curry are very regular features in this home. So my son loves it. My daughter, for some reason, it behaves like she was not born here, because she likes only pasta. She likes only Italian food. And so there's a food conflict that so we have to balance it always. The thing
that watching your movies in the virtual womb,
Yeah, literally. It's like
I know all your locales.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think they've seen anything. I think she's just got this taste of like wanting pasta and spaghetti, and doesn't like dal chawal or Sindhi kadhi and rice. And so we have to keep constantly, making her also get there, because eventually you have to like all kinds of food. But yes, there's a lot of Sindhi food being cooked for the children as well.
Sorry. Mansi Zaveri has a really important question, that with the abundance of so much today, how are you inculcating values of how to handle materialism in your children? How do we ask for things, and how do you much to give them and not give them?
I'm feeling miserably, Shoma, in that department. I have to say that she's asked a very imperative question, a very important question, a very, very question that needs addressal for all parents. But I'm feeling deep, and my mother is not happy with me, because I have spoiled them this year. And I think I've made them very, very like wanting more things, because I've given them, because I was at home through the year, every morning, noon and night. And now I'm kind of facing the brunt of it. So I'm going through that dilemma of not giving them a new thing every day, because, when we've things stocked away that we kind of don't show them and give them. But, sometimes I just can't help myself, because I'm so excited for that toy myself that I want to give it to them, or that garment that I want them to wear. I'm being so idiotically selfish about material things, because I want them this happiness that I get when I see their faces light up. So as I said, I need to change that about myself. I need someone to answer that question for me about what I should do, because I'm really failing in that department. So I have no answer to give you, but just I need assistance.
Yeah, but it is a big one, you know. I mean, I asked Shah Rukh this question once, and he said he used to take his kid to Hamleys, and he was like this with his kids. And he said Gauri put a particular amount that they could actually spend on Hamleys because he said she was clear that those middle class values should be there vis-a-vis. So, but
Totally.
it's for well-off parents, it's a very difficult question of, you know, where's that
No,
line?
so that's where my mother's values actually do come in because she balances it as much as she can. And the only fights that she's having with me, rather with my mother, it's never a fight. It's a one-way fight. She fires me and I listen. That's how I was raised. Even at 48, I'm like, my head is down when she's screaming at me and I don't say anything. So she's told me, she just took me aside 2 days ago and said, Karan, I'm not allowing you to give them anything and you are not going to interfere. The moment I find out you've given them something new, that's it. So, and that's it means, I don't know what she means the punishment I'm going to get is. I'm a bit worried because she said, that's it, because I know she can't walk out on me and I know that she can't do anything to scare me, but says it in such a scary way that I'm actually really worried now because I'm scared of my mother. I still am. And I'm like, at 48, she has given me a real telling off to. So I got and when Shah Rukh tells you that Gauri did that, but let me tell you, Shah Rukh, I don't think listened to that budget given and he did more. And I've seen him do that. You see, I think Shah Rukh is the best parent I've seen in terms of the time he gives his children and the passion in which he's parented them. So he's like my role model parent. So I think the one wrong thing I may have got from him is the indulgence. I'm working on that, Shoma. I am.
Right. Sorry, I'm just going to have a look. Namrata Sadhwani says, like you, I have twins too, and I'm a huge fan. How much of the book is inspired by your own parenting? You've spoken of that. How much is this drawn from your own childhood? Sorry, Namrata, he's spoken a lot about that. Also, please bring back lockdown with the Johars. But is there anything you want to add when she said, what have you drawn on?
No, I think I've said everything that, it's a balance of the way I was raised as opposed to how I want to raise them. As far as lockdown with the Johars is, we had to abruptly stop it because I just thought the environment wasn't conducive to me posting, happy videos between me and my children. I was sharing a piece of my life. And then I realized in social media that sharing a piece of your personal life never really works out very well. So I think it's share your perspective, not your personal life.
Just using my moderator's sort of pedestal to just speak about that thing about materialism, because it's something I discuss with my children a lot. And the one thing I never want, like I came from a very middle class home. So there was lots that you wanted and, it's only when you're older, you've been able to afford it. But I always tell my kids to be very aware of their privilege, like you use that resource well, and you constantly be aware that there are others who want those things. You want, like not to be blind in your sense of what you can have, and I think that, of course, enjoy yourself, enjoy the fact that you've born into a privileged life. But like, I think for me, it's very important that they're constantly aware that there are others who don't have that, and that you use your privilege well,
Yes.
both compassionately and for your own pleasure. So
yes.
that's,
yeah.
So just last question from Gurgaon Moms. It's the largest women's community in the NCR. It's a very generic question, but what is your advice for moms? If you had maybe 3 things you'd like to say to moms to sign off.
The first thing I tell moms is don't always annul the opinion of the dads, because sometimes they actually do say things that could be relevant. Many times not. So learn to sieve the good from the bad, but do that process. Listen to the dads at times. Also, the other thing about moms is that what another mom does may not apply to you. So don't always look over your shoulder to what another mom is doing, because there's advice in the mothers groups, and I'm part of some WhatsApp groups, is in abundance. And you get very insecure when you feel another mother is doing this, but I'm not. Like that other mother is putting the child in ballet and football and X and Y and Z. And I'm not doing all 3. Don't be insecure. Do what is your instinct and what you can do, what you can perhaps emotionally afford or monetarily afford, or just what your instinct tells you. Don't look over your shoulder. Don't do like impressionable parenting, because that's where I think that a lot of moms and dads, I think, suffer from that, like, usne kiya, main bhi karu kya? It's like, no, what applies to that household and that particular parenting may not apply to you. So don't feel lesser if you haven't done as much for your child as someone else is doing. That's the second piece of advice that I would give mom. And the third piece of advice I would give moms is what I have wrote in the book, is please allow them to breathe fluid energy. Allow them to actually interact without putting them into boxes. Please don't put your children into boxes, because the more you do, the more they will remain there. Allow them to breathe. What you say, what comes out of your mouth is very critical. So before you open your mouth to them, give it a beat of thought. That's what I do. And that's my advice to parents in general, but to moms as well, because I consider that I'm a mom and a dad, so I'm also a mom. So yeah, and yeah, that's what I would say to the Gurgaon moms, or to all the moms in general.
Right. Thank you, Karan. What you just said reminds me of a lovely phrase Aparna Sen once used, especially in this era of over-invested parenting that we all do. She said, when I look back on my childhood, she said, the biggest gift my parents gave me was benign neglect, And that's a beautiful phrase, because it actually gives you space for individuality, like just
That
benign
does happen.
neglect.
I think sometimes, letting them be and allowing them to say things or do things that perhaps don't correspond with the way you were raised or brought up, or don't conform to what you believe is your belief. Yeah, I mean, is the best way. I would call it it emotional oxygen. Like, just give them some emotional oxygen. Let's allow them to breathe the way they want to.
I think great takeaways, Karan. Beautiful conversation. Just this idea of fluidity, emotional oxygen. Those are like real guardrails for parenting. The details, each of us as individual. But I really enjoyed talking to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you after so long. And my love to everybody who has tuned in. Thank you so much. And I hope that everyone takes a piece of this book and in their own way inculcates them in their parenting processes.